I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network.
So you guys, I am so impressed with both of you. I have Kristen Carney and Marni. Marni, I don't know how to say your last name. Marni Kinry?
It's Kinry. I don't even know how to say my last name sometimes. So
that's okay. I don't,
it's Kinry.
My last name is, I always tell people my last name is I'll touch her fast. So James Altucher.
Yeah. Perfect. That's perfect.
I could use that as a line, right? Potentially.
Exactly.
So I'm so impressed with you two, and I'm glad you could both join me on this show. You've literally created like an industry by yourselves, and you've created so much content, and you've created your careers. Like, I just want to ask, have either of you ever considered like any other career other than what you're doing?
Well, Marni should answer that because Marni's the real businesswoman.
No, but Kristen, you also I've been watching your stand-up. You're hilarious. Like, what did you always start off with stand-up?
Well, I think, when you're a kid, I think you always have like an innate sense that you can't talk to other kids the way other kids talk to other kids, and you always have this sense about you that you're more observational. I remember being like 9 years old and thinking to these girls, go to the bathroom by yourselves, like you don't share a bladder. But as a 9-year-old girl, I couldn't say that to anybody else, and it wasn't until I discovered that stand-up comedy existed that I felt like I had an actual quote-unquote calling or something that I would be good at. So, it was as soon as you could understand that concept.
But Kristen, I had a few weeks ago, Jim Norton was on the podcast, and we grew up together, and I knew from like the age of 10 this guy was meant to be a stand-up comic. But when he first started, he was telling me he kept bombing his first couple of years, and I couldn't even understand it because I guess there's a lot, as he put it, there's 100,000 funny people out there, but there's an extra skill in terms of like building that rapport with the audience and really connecting with your fans that is difficult. That's a skill for the stand-up.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I never associated confidence with comedy. I always associated neuroses and self-discomfort and self-hate. But it's weird how in stand-up, as soon as you get comfortable with all of that stuff, you have an air of confidence, and then you can be funny with an audience. But if you, and so I think, whenever you start out, no matter who you are, if you're not comfortable with who you are, it's going to be weird, even if you're the funniest person in the world. But the minute you get comfortable with it, all of a sudden the tides change.
And how did you get comfortable with yourself to be comfortable with stand-up?
I'm still not comfortable. I go through this constant, who am I? What should I present to the world? Because on the inside, I feel like Larry David, but on the outside, I look like a young woman who has nothing in common with, someone of that mindset. So I'm constantly trying to get comfortable again with myself, and I actually noticed that I go up and down in waves with comedy. If I'm in a zone where I'm not questioning who I am, I do great. But something will happen in my life where then I kind of backtrack, and then I'll start bombing. So I'm always up and down.
Okay, well, we're going to get back to that because that's also related completely to the topic of what we're going to be talking about today. And Marni, you created an entire career that I never thought would be a career. I wrote a book about a year ago called Choose Yourself, where you have to, in this economy, you kind of have to figure out what you really love doing and then choose yourself to do it. And you did it. Maybe describe what you do for a living, because I think it's fascinating.
So I'm a wing girl, so I coach men on how to understand women. But it's funny, because I was just listening to your Mark Cuban interview, and you were talking about how he had made a statement about how you have to find your passions, then follow it. And you're kind of reiterating that right now, saying figure out what you like and then do it. But for me, I honestly did this by accident. I happened to be in a job that I hated. I was working in public relations, and I went to a singles mixer. And it was at a rabbi's house. And at the singles mixer, nobody was talking to each other. Men and women were literally on opposite sides of the room. So I started grabbing men and being their wing girl and their icebreaker. I would break them into conversation with women. I would tell them what to say. I would tell them to untuck their shirts. I would help them from stopping fidgeting because it was distracting and it made them look like they had lack of confidence. And by the end of the night, people were interacting. They were making out. They were exchanging phone numbers. And so when I went home at 1:30 in the evening, I made a joke to my roommate and said, I hate PR. I wish I could do PR for these guys. I wish I could be their wing girl. And at that time, the term wing girls didn't exist. And he said there is no
in my
way.
mind, that term didn't even exist until about a week ago when I started researching you.
Then I'm not doing a good job, obviously. That's horrible to hear. But
no, I'm married, so I'm not out there on the scene. But I was fascinated. It's such a great idea. So keep on going. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no, that's okay. But and my roommate, who was a guy, and he was much older, he said to me, he's like, "There's no way that guys would ever pay for that service. You would fail in business. They don't want to hear what women think, and they don't care for a woman to help them with women."
I don't understand why a guy would say that, because I would have so paid for that every step of the way.
That's the thing. After I talked to more guys are like, this is genius. Why wasn't somebody doing this a long time ago? But he was like, nope, not going to happen. So I went into my room, put an ad on Craigslist at 1:30 in the morning, and I just started getting responses. And then I started playing around with my price points. I started playing around with my language that I was using, and then went to sleep probably at 2:30. And by the next morning, I had over 75 responses from guys who were interested in me taking them out and picking up women for them and being their wing girl and icebreaker.
And
so
how would you charge for that? Would you charge per date or per month or what? Or if they got the girl of their dreams, how would you charge?
I was playing around with it. So at first it was $175 for 3 hours, and then it was $475. I wanted to see, what people would pay for this service. I'm I didn't even really know what it was that I was doing at that time. All I knew was that there was something of interest to other people, and I had put up an ad saying, what better way to attract bees than with honey? Sit back and relax, and I'll do all the work for you. Just be that hot guy in the corner and have me as your wing girl get women for you. And I just played around with that service. And for the first few months, that's the service that I did offer to men. But as time went on, I saw what the market wanted, where I could actually make money, where I could be most helpful for people. And then I also stumbled upon the online marketing community. So I learned how to take my in-person service and apply it to people all over the world. So they didn't have to be in Los Angeles to work with me. They could be anywhere in the world and still have the information that I was offering to these guys.
So you've become like an internet marketer. Like I saw in your book, you mentioned
David D'Angelo, for instance. He's like the ultimate internet marketer in the pickup scene.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's like God in that world. Or at least he was when I first started, and this was 10 years ago. And so actually, I had heard of David
10 years ago?
D'Angelo.
You've been doing this for 10 years?
Yeah, I've been doing this since 2003, so almost 11 years now.
Oh, my gosh. So I was single for a period from about 2007 or 2008 to 2010, or no, 2009. And I totally should have used your services. I was a wreck.
Totally should have. I'm not a good internet marketer, obviously, if you weren't finding me.
No, I kind of took things into my own hands. I sort of felt like I could do it, but I probably could have done it better with all. You can never have enough help, is my view. So
that's true. But I've listened to a couple of your interviews. From the way that you present yourself, I would think you'd be totally fine.
It was hard work, actually. I had to I had to work at it. Like, I'll tell you a story. My initial technique was really, really bad. I put an ad on Craigslist, and I said that I had hurt my head, and I had this massive headache, and I went unconscious, and when I woke up, I was psychic. And does anybody have any questions for me? I just feel this need to help people. And then I would ignore all the emails that guy sent, and I only responded to the emails that girl sent. So that was my very first technique.
That was your
really
move?
Horrible and manipulative. I admit now it was like the worst thing possible. Although I'm
did it
still
work?
Facebook friends with all those women, so that's okay.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
But I didn't have sex.
But now you're
with any of
married.
them.
Now you're married, so obviously you did something right.
Yeah, you know what was the most thing right for me, and then I want to find out from you what the most thing right is for people in general. The most thing right for me is that I started saying no to people. So instead of just going on random dates and taking advantage of random opportunities, I sort of decided what my goal was, which was basically to get remarried, and I would say no to any situation that wasn't moving me forward in that direction. And when I say saying no, I was saying no to everything, and that's what kind of got me on track and ultimately having meet somebody.
I love that, because it's funny, because I was listening to Kristen give her description of what she does, and then you just giving that description for you. And it ends up, all of it is tied into each other. It really comes down to confidence, and that's what we teach in my business, the Wing Girl Method, but then also on our podcast, the Ask Women podcast, that we talk about owning who you are and not just, putting other people on pedestals, especially women, people you have no idea who they are, what they're about. All you know is that they're pretty and they have a nice smile and maybe some nice breasts or something. And suddenly you put them way ahead of yourself. And what you're saying that you did in dating, what Kristen was saying that she's doing in comedy, is really owning who you are and being comfortable in your own skin and being okay with whether it's good or bad, which I think is awesome. So it's cool how it goes full circle.
It does go full circle, and Kristen with stand-up, so I've done some public speaking, and if you go out there and there's this kind of blank crowd, you can't see the crowd in front of you, but you still have to connect with them. It's all about, it's almost this primal thing. It has to come from inside of you, and it's you have to shoot out a superhero or something, confidence raise to everyone in the audience. I'm always, with stand-up in particular, they're not going to hear you speak about I don't know, the White House or anything. They're going to hear you, they're expecting you to make them laugh. So there's this extra pressure. I don't know, that's really hard to have that kind of confidence, I think.
Yeah, it is. And I always actually, with that, with the stage where it's completely pitch black and you can't see anything, that has always been a hard part for me, because I do like to, if I can see someone's reaction, I can feel their energy. But when you can't see their reaction, you really don't know what they're thinking about you. So you almost have to go into a robotic state and just assure yourself that you've done this a million times and that you can do it again. So it is definitely at that point, that becomes more of a performance when you can't see the audience, because you really are, you feel like you're in a closet by yourself, and that's when you have to just turn on the magic and just go with it. So that, for me, has always been a little bit more difficult, but you can get into a rhythm where it feels more natural.
How long do you think it took you before you started feeling more confident on the stage in stand-up? That you could basically call yourself a stand-up comic?
Probably I would say 4 years.
4 years. So
You
it
know, and
always takes. That's what's scary. I would love to one day, and I'm sure many people say this to you. I would love to one day try stand-up comedy, but everyone says 4 years. I was just talking the other day to Marina Franklin. Do you know who she is? She's on she's on a bunch of different things, but she was telling
I
me
don't
it
know.
took her 11 years before she had the confidence. That's scary.
Yeah, I should probably up my number a little bit on that. You hear people who have gotten on stage, for maybe 2 months or 2 times, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I do stand up," and there's nothing more cringeworthy than hearing that, and like you feel like a pit in your stomach because you're like, "No, I do stand up. I've been, hustling and earning it." So I think a lot of comics get angry when someone just does stand up a couple of times and then puts a picture, on their social media holding a microphone, because it does take a long time. And I think 4 years for me is basically getting to the point where I feel like I'm allowed to do comedy, where I'm allowed to say I do stand up and I'm a comedian. But I'm sure that there's, I've been doing it for about 6. So I think that there's definitely an incredibly long road ahead until I can actually feel like a successful comedian, because I certainly don't feel successful, but I feel like I do stand up, so.
Well, and this is a great opportunity now to kind of join your stories here. So you guys do the Ask Women podcast, and also Marni, you do the Wing Girl Method blog, and you sell your services and product, or what do you sell on your blog?
Everything, including myself and my soul. I sell products online. I sell at-home kits. I sell coaching classes, talent classes, boot camps, books that I've written, lots of stuff. But also,
and are you the only woman who sells pickup artist type materials?
No, I don't. There's certain times where, like, I have a database of people who have signed up for my newsletters, and sometimes I will show other experts to them that maybe have conflicting point of views to me, only because my job, I feel, is to provide information to men, and I'm not the only bit of information that's out there. I want them to be real men who collect a full scope of information and can pick and choose what is best for them. So sometimes I will show other people, but I have to at least be friends with those people and know that they have good intentions behind what they're doing. I don't ever talk about other people who manipulate women, who objectify women. I'm a woman, so I would never want to.
Well, it seems like, and I've been reading your materials, and I think we agree. Like, all that pickup artist stuff is junk. I think I don't know how it works at all. Actually, like, I can't imagine doing any of it, and I'm not even saying this just to agree with you. Like, I honestly can't imagine how any of it works at all. Like, I think you described how you were hanging out with Mystery at one conference, and all of his stuff was intriguing while you were talking to him. And so he, just for listeners, he's like one of the most well-known pickup artists.
Yeah,
so you were really intrigued while you were talking to him, but then after you were talking to him, you had like zero interest in ever talking to him again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All I wanted was for him to want me during that time. But that is the thing, that men do want other women to see that they're men of value and men who need to be scooped up quickly, because they're going to be scooped up by somebody else if they're not quickly taken. And the thing is that he wasn't doing anything like douchebaggy or manipulative. He was honestly just having interesting and fun conversation and positioning himself in a high-value way. That I found attractive and engaging and exciting to be a part of, but it didn't make me think about him afterwards. Like, literally the next day, I did not think about him at all. But in that moment, all I wanted was for him to want me and see me as special.
But is that because, he, in that particular conference, which was like a pickup conference, in the status hierarchy, he has high status. So right then, when you're kind of being surrounded by that hierarchy, you of course were in some ways attracted at that moment to the person who had highest status. But once you were out of that hierarchy...
But I didn't even know he did. Okay, so for me, I didn't even know the pickup artist industry existed, right? So when we first contacted David D'Angelo. I had no idea who he was. I had no idea what a pickup artist was. He interviewed me to see if I could come speak at his conference, and he was using all these terms, and I was like, what are you talking about? But obviously pretending I knew what he was talking about. And he said, yeah, okay, come speak at this event. It's happening on this date. It's 3 days. It's going to be a room of 300 guys. You'll be great. So I went there. I didn't know who anybody was. I had no clue that this world existed. So I actually didn't know Mystery, and I didn't know who he was within that industry until afterwards. So so yes, I'm sure if I was in a space where I did know his status, it would definitely put him at an even higher level. But for me, I had no clue who he was. He was a guy in a unitard who I thought looked really weird and crazy.
Was he really wearing a unitard?
Really tall. Oh yeah,
he was wearing a top hat and nail polish.
And
When you wear a
nail polish
unitard
and
and
a lunch bag as a purse.
So, Kristen, what do you think of Marni spending 2 hours talking to a guy wearing nail polish?
Well, the thing is that he calls himself Mystery, but when you call yourself Mystery, you take away any mystery that's actually there. It's like you
That's
know,
a great
like,
point.
okay, I get you. You think you're interesting, or you think you're deep or artsy or whatever. For me, I have like very little tolerance of this stuff because I didn't even know it existed until I met Marni. And so, the minute I saw a guy like that, it would be hilarious. I wouldn't talk to him for sure. I wouldn't talk to him at all.
But how do you know? Because it sounds, Marni, like I bet you normally wouldn't talk to him either, and yet he had some sort of allure.
Oh, absolutely. It's really funny because one of my products is called What's Inside a Woman's Mind. And it's interviews that I do with women where I push them to give real answers instead of their typical, like, I'm a woman and I would never do this. And well, like I try to get them to really give their honest answers. And most women, and most people in general, you say ideally the way that you would respond. Here's what, in my mind, in a very calm state, I believe I would choose to do if X, Y, and Z happened. So I have several scenarios where I have girlfriends of mine where I've interviewed them, and they've said, nope, I would never go out with a guy who did X, for example, or I would never go out with a guy who said this to me. Okay, and I've taken that as a challenge to put them in situations where they have those things happening. And I will say that if it is the right guy with a strong character and confidence who's able to respect himself and show his value, he will change that response around and have her do a 180 where she will say yes to him asking something if he has X job or if he does I don't know. I can't even think of an example right now. But things that they would say. Like, I've put my girlfriends in scenarios where they've said, I would never respond to a guy who would say this to me. And then we were out at night, and I would tell a guy who I knew was confident to go up and flirt with my friend and say that to her. And she would end up making out with him by the end of the night. So in an ideal world, yes, Kristen would not respond or not engage to a person who is wearing a unitard. But there are specific situations where she would, and she would actually have a really good time and probably end up liking that person in some way. Maybe she wouldn't be attracted to him because she's in her 30s now, so she's going to be a little bit more skeptical. But
did Marni just out your age there?
Oh, she did out me. I'm going to out her too. She's got a couple years on me, so take that.
Yeah, we're both in our 30s. That's the interesting thing because I was 23,
but let me say,
when I did meet this Mystery.
But let me say this: even in my 20s or my teens, I have always felt and thought the same way. I've only dated like 2 guys. I've been super picky. So I think there's certain women, and I'm not saying that they're like below me at all, but I think there are certain women that are more open. I'm very closed off and like neurotic. And so I think there's certain people where that works. And even if you think it wouldn't work, it would work. But for me, I know 100% it wouldn't work. I just looked up pictures of Mystery. I've actually never seen pictures of him. And I'm like, now I'm 200% sure it wouldn't work.
You know, I've never seen
like vomiting
either. Actually, I always thought he was a big mystery. So I'm gonna Google that as well.
Yeah, I've actually never wanted to Google just for the sake that I wanted to make sure in my mind I didn't like him. Because I assumed if I saw a picture, I'd go, oh, well, maybe he's not that bad. But I saw a picture, and I definitely think he's just as bad as I imagine.
So what? So let's get right into it. What actually, for you guys, what does work when for a guy who is single and wants to meet a girl? What should he do? Let's say I'm back in 2008. What should I do?
Well, the thing is that we've done over 65 episodes now of the Ask Women podcast. So I have an understanding of what Kristen is attracted to. She has an understanding of what I'm attracted to. And on the surface level, they're different things. Like, we are never going to compete over the same person. We have specific likes. We know what we want in terms of partnership, and we both have partners. So, and those people are very different from one another. But we've agreed on several platforms, I'll call it, in terms of, at the core, what women want from men. So across the board, women are looking, and they all come in different shapes and sizes depending on who the woman is, but we're looking to be with somebody who is a leader, someone who knows what he wants, someone who's comfortable in his own skin, somebody who is calm, cool, and collected and can handle our emotions. That is ultimately what we are attracted to. And I hate to throw the term out there, just being yourself, but it's guys who know how to be themselves and what that actually means. They own who they are, and like you said earlier on the call today, you decided to say no to things, which means that you can make decisions, you have opinions, and you can put a boundary in place. And that is super sexy to myself, to Kristen, and to, for me, the thousands of women that I've interviewed, and then the other women that we've talked to since doing our podcast.
I have to say, it was really difficult for me because I grew up kind of a nerdy, acneed, glasses, braces kid, with like black curly hair, like very, Jewy looking. I'm Jewish in a, racially diverse neighborhood. And I was the bottom of the food chain. So anytime a girl gave me any attention, I would instantly fall in love from like the age of 6 years old on. And it took me a long time to learn how to say no to that.
Yeah. Well, if you have no opportunity being thrown your way. Oh, sorry, go on, Kristen.
No, it's okay. And what you should value is the fact that all of those things gave you a lot more character than the other guys who had it easy on the block did. And when you do get older, and women, we've talked about this a lot, it really, of course, you have to be attracted to your partner, but it really comes down to if you guys connect and if she likes who you are. So all of those things shaped you as a better person. Whereas if you didn't go through those hardships with women or with being the outcast, you wouldn't be who you are today, and you wouldn't be able to offer the same things.
Yeah, and we call it pretty boy syndrome. When you are pretty when you're younger, you never really have to think about having a personality because things just came to you really easily. You would literally have to say like 3 words and girls would be into you. But as you get older, as you get into your 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, it starts to change. Women require a lot more than just like a nice smile in order to keep them interested or even catch their attention. So
but it also,
right.
it seems like men need to be really careful about what they signal. So, it's not, they can't just sort of like show you their fancy car or anything either. That would be bad as well.
Well, they can.
Yeah, I think
for certain
you
women,
can definitely get women. You can definitely get women that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a quality woman or the woman that you want. I mean, maybe that is what you want, that type of woman, but that doesn't work across the board. Certainly, it's not just what you have. Like Marni said, if you're a leader, if you have goals, that's a lot more attractive than a super flashy car.
Okay, so
we're teaching guys to have
technique.
Opportunities.
Let's talk technique here because guys probably call you, Marni, and say, well, I'm in the Whole Foods produce section and I want to walk up to a girl. What do I say? But that's not really the point. The point is really to figure out how to be a leader from the inside, and then you'll know what to say. So what are the techniques that you tell them where they can basically build up this self-confidence and become a leader?
Okay, well that's a large answer. So there's like tons of exercises for them to do and little things that they can do on a daily basis in order to build up that confidence level, get really familiar with who they are, what they want. It's a lot of self-work, which I know is not the sexiest thing in the entire world when all you're trying to do is like figure out how to pick up and approach girls. But I believe this, Kristen believes this, that like if you do not turn yourself on, I'm not talking about like turning yourself on. It's actually, I'm just saying like if you don't like yourself and you can't be proud of who you are, then nobody else is going to feel that way about you. You can't expect women especially to help pick you up and see the potential in you. You have to show them your potential. You have to show them how great you are, but you have to believe that yourself first. So there's a lot of things that we talk about on our podcast that help guide men down that path. In terms of techniques, we have techniques for starting conversations, for having conversations, ways to listen to women so that you can remember how to listen, how to engage, how to open up and share, and ultimately how to connect, which is the biggest thing that a lot of men forget to do in their conversations. They forget how to connect because that's what makes you memorable after. When I talked to Mystery that first time, he made an impression, but we didn't make a connection, which meant I didn't think about him afterwards.
That's really interesting because if you look at it from, I don't know how much you looked into evolutionary psychology and how that's related to how we choose our mates. But like women,
we had
of course,
David Buss on our podcast talking about the evolution of desire. So we've done a lot of research on that.
Oh, who did you have on your podcast?
David Buss, who wrote The Evolution of Desire.
Oh, okay. I haven't read that. I was just talking to
awesome.
Jeff Miller. Do you know who he is? He wrote The Mating Mind.
Oh, I've heard of him too.
Yeah, I'll introduce you guys because you should definitely have him on your podcast. He's really smart. And he's kind of an expert in the subtleties of this. Very interesting stuff. But again, what he would say about a guy like Mystery is that Mystery stands out, so you're going to notice him, but he's not really showing that, what you're calling leadership qualities. He would say he's not really showing that he's necessarily the fittest, even though he's standing out.
That's true. Absolutely.
So
he didn't show me, like what David Buss says in his book, is that women are attracted to men that bring them closer to resources. Not meaning that men who have money are attractive, but men who can bring them closer to resources, like finances, yes, number one, but also drive is really important. Men who are always going to be able to provide safety for them, so either a social circle or strong value of themselves or intelligence, like all of those things. There's 18 characteristics, not just 3, like all men think, that drive our desire towards men.
So one of the interesting things is that, a lot of people in the pickup artist community sort of have this phrase, peacocking, where, a peacock, a male peacock will have this, very colorful plume, and that's what attracts women, or female, or peahens or whatever.
Right.
But the reality is, from an evolutionary psychology point of view, what they're really showing is not how beautiful their plume is, but how they could care less about what predators think of them because they're so tough. So, like, a lion is going to see this plume, but they don't care because they're acting really tough, and so that signals to the female peacock that this guy is not just standing out, but he's wasting his survival chances in order to impress me because he's got an overabundance of survival ability. And so it's different from how the pickup artist will use it.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I kind of just learned that actually by doing these podcasts. But so how did you two meet?
Well, Marni does a lot of stuff with the askmen.com website, which has like millions of viewers and all of that. And I started doing some hosting for them, and then they basically wanted to do a segment called Ask Women, and so they kind of pulled their resources of women that they were already working with, and so then Marni and I met, and doing the segment for the site specifically, and we felt like there was some potential there because it was like a conversation that probably wasn't being heard by most men, women answering in a unbiased way that also had a good sense of humor and good information, and so we thought to move forward with it, and a podcast would be a good avenue for it.
Yeah, I feel like, why don't men look towards women to help them? Like, why do men look towards men to help them? Which seems like totally counterintuitive.
Unless you want help with your car, just talk to women.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that, like, men can give 95% of the information, right? But we can really give that extra 5% that men will never have access to, and vice versa. Like, if any of my girlfriends ever have a real issue with the guy that they're seeing, I'll tell them to talk to my husband, because I can comfort them, I can give them guidance, I can give them advice, but my husband can say to them, this is what's going on inside of his head, this is what his hormones are doing to him, this is what his sex drive is doing to him, this is testosterone, this is being a guy, this is where a guy is coming from. So I think it's always wonderful for guys to have other men in their lives that they can learn from and watch them behave, because they can't watch me go up and pick up a girl and have it be the same thing that they will do later on, because I'm a totally different person, I'm a different gender. It's not going to be the same way I'm going to be interacting with women. But the information that I provide, that Kristen provides, that women can provide to men, that extra 5% really is the difference between them getting the girl and not getting the girl. It's everything.
I feel like the percentage is greater, because the only thing I feel like a guy could tell me is, dude, she cheated on you and you're blind to it. That's
Really,
the
a
only
girl
thing
can
a
tell
guy
you
can
that
tell
too.
me and probably be 100% accurate when they tell me. But everything else a guy tells me has always been wrong.
Really?
Yeah, guys don't really give good advice on girls. Like, what do guys know about girls?
Maybe that's true. But the guys can show you. Like, you can learn from watching a guy interact with other girls. Like, okay, well, that's what he's doing. I see how he's carrying himself. I mean, like, a girl can tell you that stuff, too. That's what we talk about all the time. We talk about all of those things that men talk about as well. So we give the 100% of the information as opposed to the 95%. But
Okay, when you're giving advice to your friends who are female about their guy situations, I bet you're not giving as good advice as when you're talking to guys about their female situations.
Oh, for sure.
Exactly. And I think,
But
I think what men are missing is, sorry if I'm a little echoey right now, but I think what men are missing is that women, and that we can share, is that women are very intuitive and they think with their gut and their heart a lot more than men. They're not as logical in their decisions when it comes to these things. So men think, oh, if I offer her XYZ and I'm wearing this, very ironed shirt, then she's going to like me. But it's more what she feels inside than what she just sees and touches, and it's not always tangible for women.
yeah. And
You
that's
know,
the thing
I
that we
think-
understand.
I mean, it seems like a big part of it is just the biology. Like, women are the ones who have to raise kids. So when a woman has sex with a guy, the guy could leave the next day, but the women potentially have just made a 20-year investment. So you have to be women in general have to be a lot choosier. So it can't be just about what that flashy shirt is or what that first pickup line is. Like you say, there has to be this kind of inner confidence that sort of exudes through to show the woman that this is a guy who's going to be there.
Absolutely. So even if a guy, approaches us and he's so funny and he's so funny for 2 hours of the night and it's awesome and we're enjoying it, by the end of those 2 hours, sometimes even a shorter period of time, depending on the age of the woman's going to be like, okay,
hopefully.
What else do you have? Hopefully. But when you're when you're younger, you can go for 2 hours on banter and flirting. But the next time that she's going to see you, she's going to be like, hey, what else you got for me? We know you're funny. What else is there? You have to show me that you can give me more. There's more to you that you're going to be able to provide, that you're going to be intelligent, that you're going to have drive, and that it's not just I have a sense of humor and I'm funny.
And just to be clear, it's not just, obviously both of you provide for yourselves. So it's not just that they're going to provide for you in a financial way, but just that they're not losers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's pretty simple once you break it down. Just don't be a giant loser.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Done.
define
over.
giant loser, because I would say most people in general are losers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Even if it doesn't look it from the outside.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, okay, so this is where Kristen and I differ. I'm going to say it horribly. I look at, not that I'm a glass half full person, she's a glass half empty person, but I would say, the world isn't full of losers. The world is full of people who are afraid to do things and act and take chances and possibly fail. That's not a loser. Maybe I'll call it wimpy, but I don't even want to label it as those things.
Okay, that's fair.
I think that there's certain people who put themselves out there and who take chances, and there's a lot of people out there who don't think they have the ability to be that person, but they absolutely do. Everybody can get what they want. Everybody can go after what they want, and everybody can be whatever they want to be. They just have to take that first step. And that's a lot of what we teach guys on our show and within my business as well.
Okay, so what's that first step? Like, how would you teach somebody who's basically been brainwashed by the pickup scene and has encountered failure after failure? How would you teach them to kind of start standing on their feet?
Well, the first thing that I do in all of my programs is I have these guidebooks that I give to them that really gets them to know themselves and identify what their values are. And this exercise I actually got from doing my own coaching in the past, because I had no idea what my values were. I was always like, oh, yeah, I have the same values as my boyfriend, but I had no idea what those values actually were. And so over time, once you start to know more about who you are and what you want, and you have it written on paper, it becomes really real. And
what's an example value?
An example of a value is I like to be open, and I like people to be around people who are open as well. Or I really value fun, or I value family and friends. I value privacy. Those are really strong things. And once you can identify your own values, you can understand how other people have different values. Because for me, for example, I used to detest people who valued privacy. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I always thought they were weird. They were closed off and closed-minded. I didn't understand it at all until I did this exercise and understood that it was something of great importance to them to hold their information close to them and only share it with specific people. And I could see it in a different light once I started identifying my own values and understood how important they were to me. And I have over 100 values, but they're, I've categorized them, and I have, my top 3 to 5 that are really important to me.
So you think when a guy starts listing his values and the things that are important to him, it gives him a little bit more of that inner confidence, like, oh, I'm not going to go down this direction because it doesn't fit my values?
Exactly. So if they're sitting on a date, they're not just thinking, okay, like me, I'm going to tap dance for you, I'm going to show you how great I am. They sit back and say, okay, do we have similar values? Even to just hang out as friends. That girl was rude to the waiter. I'm not into that. That's not a value of mine. So that you can literally just respect yourself more in that moment, because you understand what works for you and what doesn't. Just like you were saying before, that you said no to things. It's because you took a moment to pause and notice what you wanted to do and what you didn't want to do. Whereas before, you were just saying, sure, I'll do anything. Sure, I'm happy with that. Sure, I don't care what you do to me. And that doesn't really put you in a position of power. And
no,
it doesn't mean power over other people.
It was really horrible.
It's just power over yourself, power over your decisions, power what things and what people you let into your life. And that's where confidence stems from. And confidence, we talk about it all the time on the Ask Women podcast. We talk about how confidence doesn't mean that you're 100% confident 100% of the time and you never have a down moment. It just means that you can help yourself a lot faster and you don't get into this depression hole from something small or even large happening to you. You have the tools and the skill sets to be able to handle whatever comes your way. That's what confidence means. It doesn't mean you're not affected by things.
Well, it seems like part of what you're saying is confidence is also noticing when your emotions might be getting out of control or inappropriate.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
and
an inappropriate emotion might be if you're using some guy's opinion of you to judge yourself.
Exactly. And separate from the confidence thing, so for me, I had a stroke when I was 20 years old. So, and that stroke came from my own social anxiety. And the reason that I really identify with a lot of these guys is because when I was younger, women intimidated me, especially pretty women. I would always be the nice girl around them. I never really stated my opinion. I always wanted them to be my friend. I always put them on a pedestal. So they always kind of kept me around, but they weren't really friends with me the way that I saw other girls interacting with each other, because I really wasn't putting anything out there that showed I was an individual. And from all of this social pressure I was putting onto myself, where I was living in my head and overanalyzing everything, I had a stroke when I was 20, and I promised myself.
So you think you were holding it all in, and it just kind of until literally you burst a blood vessel?
Yeah, for sure. I had disorder.
I've never heard of anyone who had a stroke at the age of 22.
No, 20. I was 20 years old. But yeah, it's not very common. So when I recovered, I said, okay, I want to be that person that I see myself as, not the person that I'm living my life as. Because in my head, I was funny, I was fun, I was opinionated, I would do fun things, and people would want to be around somebody like what I pictured in my head. So I started doing exercises, and these are the exercises that we provide to guys. So the first step that you're asking for is definitely, to think and to really discover who you are. The second exercise of getting social and interacting with women is really just starting to put yourself out there. So I always say to guys, and Kristen always says to guys, if you can't approach a 75-year-old man sitting on a park bench who's like really ugly, you're going to have a hell of a time approaching a super hot woman that you want to insert something into.
I love that advice. I think I'm going to steal that advice.
But it's true. So you have to take a step back and approach 10 people every single day and just start off by saying hi. And I know that doesn't sound anything like, what you would do if you want to pick up a girl, but there's 30 other exercises after that help with picking up women. But that's the first step.
I'll tell you what I do. I do this to this day. And it has nothing to do with picking up anybody, but it just helps my life. So when I'm walking down the street, I live in New York City. When I'm walking down the street, there's always people walking in the other direction. I always pretend I'm each person's mother, and then I'm smiling at them as if I'm their mother and they're my child. So
I love
men,
that.
women,
I
try to avoid this with little kids because it could be creepy. But I'll tell you, women smile back 100% of the time.
Of course they do.
Right.
But even more so, what you're doing is you're starting to notice all the people around you. You're showing that you're open and you're seeing the opportunities around you rather than, living like all the other zombies in the world who have their head down, who are ashamed of themselves.
And you're also doing something to shake something up in their brain because the 100 people that have already walked by them have not smiled and have not looked. So when you do something different, you initiate some sort of, chemical in the brain saying, oh, this is different. I'm going to take notice. So you instantly open them up based on their own surprise of the pleasantry.
I think that's right. I think they're not used to it, so they don't know what's happening, and they smile back.
Yeah, right. Who's this cocky guy? Why is he so constantly smiling at me?
Yeah, who's this weirdo? I have to be careful when I pass men because then they think I'm gay.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But Kristen, I just want to ask though, you say you've been in 2 major relationships. You're in your 30s. How long has this current relationship been going on?
Done 6 years.
6 years, and how come I just have to ask, how come you're not married? Just by no one's asked each other, or you decided this is not philosophically what you want to do, or?
For whatever reason, I come from a family that has very good marriages, and there's very little divorce, and everyone's very happy. But for some reason, marriage to me is so scary, and I think that I feel that way because I am pursuing something out of the norm. That for whatever reason in my brain, I think if I get married, I've failed. My life is over. I can no longer pursue, these interesting different things that I'm pursuing, and now I have to become regular and normal. So I think that's number one why, and I think number 2 would be because my boyfriend and I are great, and, we've been together for a long time, but I think we still have issues that we would want to work out before. It's we're together and we want to stay together, but there's that kind of that sidebar of this is probably not as great as it should be if we were to get married.
I think that second part, it sounds really honest because, Marni, when she said that first part, that about being afraid that she wouldn't be able to accomplish what she wanted, that to me sounded almost like an excuse as opposed to the real reason.
Yeah, for sure. There's something that's definitely deeper below that. But that can also be a surface level fear. It may be true, but that's only because she's limiting herself. It's not him or being married to him that would hold her back from having that happen.
I will tell you though, that was the excuse I gave myself before I got married to my first wife, which ended in divorce.
Really?
Yeah, I was really afraid, particularly when I had kids. I was really afraid. That's it. All of my creativity is over. And you know what? I was right until I got divorced. So,
all right.
Not that the same thing's going to happen to you.
She was the wrong woman for you, or because you just fed into that belief.
That could be, yeah. I could have maybe just got too trapped into that excuse. So,
Yeah.
but okay. So, Marni, what's the third step? You're giving me the first two steps. What's the third step?
The third step is to learn specific techniques about how to have conversations. So one of the things that we teach guys, it's called OSA, which is the Wing Girl method for starting conversation with women and continuing conversation with women. So OSA is OSA, and you're doing it right now on this interview. It's the way that people naturally have conversations, but it's difficult for a lot of guys to do when they're picking up and approaching women, because typically they'll approach a woman and they'll ask her question after question after question after question, right? Interview mode, until they hit on something that they think gets a woman to open up. But what we tell men to do is open up first and lead by example. So OSA is observation, sharing, and asking questions, so that you're in the driver's seat. You make an observation about something or someone or the world around you, and then you share a little bit about it. So sharing in a way that shows who you are, what you're about, what your opinions are. It doesn't have to be a big share, but it can be a little share. And after you share and expand on why you've made a statement, then you open it up to the woman or to the people that you're talking to, and you ask a question. And you can just keep
it's kind of funny because it's similar. It's similar in the business world a little bit. Like, let's say you're pitching a customer, and the customer is a male. You usually want to show the man that there's some sort of financial opportunity in this for him. Like, let's say you're doing a one-on-one pitch, but if the customer is a woman, then it's a little bit better is to share an intimacy first. Like, intimacy is sort of the currency for women, whereas financial opportunity is kind of the currency for selling a man.
100%.
So that's interesting. So I saw that OSA that you mentioned, but you didn't really describe it completely in what I read. So go deeper into it. What's the next step?
Okay, so the next step after OSA is actually called LCA, which is learn, confirm, and appreciate. And this is the part that makes women addicted to you and separates you from friend and puts you into like a lover or a potential dating category or sex for that evening. But learning, confirming, and appreciating. So when a woman does respond back to you, you learn something about her, or you listen, and you confirm that you've heard what she's said. So it's like active listening, exactly what you're doing on this phone call. You're reinforcing us by repeating back to us what we've said or saying, I agree with you. That's what confirm sounds like or looks like to other people. And then the important part, and this is the same in business world, the same in any world, it's appreciate. It's appreciate this woman for what she said. But what you're really saying to her when you appreciate is, now that you've said that, I see you differently than I did before. I get you and understand you, and there's something special about you. And because I'm a man of value who doesn't see this very often, it has way more importance, and you're very special. And,
so,
that can be done really easily in conversation, but it sounds very grand when I'm explaining it. But ultimately what it's doing is it's saying to this woman, I'm pretty awesome, and I'm seeing you as pretty awesome as well.
So it's interesting because it's still, if the man is still underlying not confident in himself, I forget who it was who said, maybe it was Marianne Williamson, who said, if you want to meet the most interesting guy in the world, you have to be the most interesting woman in the world. So it was advice for women. And it's still for the guy, how is he still has to have that underlying confidence to LCA.
Absolutely. Like, even, this may not be directly correlated, but I saw the movie Begin Again, which is amazing, by the way, the one with Keira Knightley and Mark Ruffalo. But she was talking to, Keira Knightley in the movie is talking to Mark Ruffalo's daughter, and she was talking to her about the way that she was dressing. And she was dressing really slutty. And she was saying to her, like, yeah, like, you're not going to get a quality guy because these guys know they can get you already. They know what they can get from you by looking at what you're wearing. Like, you have to leave something up to the imagination for men. So don't dress like they can already have you. Dress like they want to figure out what's underneath your clothing. And it's kind of, the same thing in all of your interactions with other people. And just like you said, if you want to be the most interesting, if you want to date the most interesting man, you have to be the most interesting woman. Same thing for guys. If you want to date an awesome woman, you have to be an awesome man and own that and acknowledge it and be vulnerable at the same time. And you don't have to be an arrogant jerk. But in order for you to welcome those awesome women into your life, you first have to be that awesome person and really believe that about yourself.
But you do have to be that person authentically. I
Yes,
had
exactly.
an experience in college where I was completely infatuated with this guy who's in a band that's relatively large or famous. And I had gotten the opportunity to interview him, and then we ended up having like a back and forth in email, and which was like, I had been a fan of this guy for a long time, so it was like blowing my mind. But I had nothing really in common with him, but I was forcing things in common. And so in a drunken stupor at one point where I went to one of his shows, I said that I was learning like the instrument that he played, which was completely pathetic of me. I was like, I'm learning this because you played us. I was 19 years old, so it's like, that's, understandable for someone at that age. But looking back on it, and he gave me a look of like, that's pathetic. And that's when I realized I need to be who I am, and then make that, and then if that's interesting to someone else, that's great. So don't try to be interesting to interest them. Make sure it's you naturally being interesting.
It's interesting that you say that because, there's all sorts of studies that different body postures, make people think you're confident. But the problem is, if you just do the posture, you actually could appear unconfident if you're not authentically feeling confident underneath. Like you almost have to method act your confidence to really project confidence.
Right.
Yeah,
and all this sounds very convoluted. All of this, I think, comes across, very complicated, but it's really just simple. Basically, all we're saying is be you. Literally be comfortable being you, but just be the best you can be.
No, it sounds actually, what I like about your method is that it sounds like the right technique as opposed to all these fancy, complicated formulas in the pickup artist scene. Like, I remember, I went to this dinner once, and I was sitting next to this guy who was very confident, and he had a very beautiful wife. And some guy leaned over to me and said, that guy makes $30 million a year. And I'm like, how could he make that? And this guy said to me, well, and this was the guy sitting next to me turned out to be David D'Angelo. He's this big pickup. He's got all these pickup artists, boot camps and stuff. And I couldn't believe it that the industry was even that big. But I think it's because they make it almost too complicated so they could charge extremely high prices, sell all these, boot camps to all these like wimpy guys or whatever, and make a ton of money.
Right.
Whereas taking it to the basics, I think actually does work. Actually working on people's insides works.
Yeah, for sure.
It does.
Okay, the one thing is that, like, when somebody says to you, just be yourself, in the past, I would say, but I am, or but I don't know how to do that, so that other people will like it. So, yes, I somewhat agree with you, but I also understand.
People are afraid, though, to be themselves is the problem.
Yeah, for sure. Or they don't know what that means to be themselves, or, like, how to have conversations. So sometimes you do need a whole 200-page book on how to have conversation because you're not doing it right now, but you need to understand it depending on the way that you learn or the way that your brain works. You may need it to be broken down step by step by step by step by step. So what we try and do with Ask a Woman podcast and with the Win Girl method is really just take these grand concepts and break them down into small steps so that everything can be achievable. So that you do an exercise, like one of the exercises that I have is called the silly walk, right? And that's something that I did for myself to figure out if the way that I was walking was capturing the attention that I wanted. So what you do is, or what I did was I went to Whole Foods, and I did 4 different laps, and each lap I would walk a different way. I would hold myself differently and see what type of attention I would get from other people and see how I would feel when I was looking at other people. And then I could choose to do one of the 4 walks at any time of the day. I know that at certain points where I don't care what people think, I can walk a certain way. I know that if I want to get attention from other people, from men especially, I can walk a certain way. I know if I want to be seen as open and friendly, I can walk a certain way. And those things are always interesting to learn for yourself, and just as a psychological practice. So sometimes there does need to be more instruction on how to bring out the self that you actually want to be, because just saying be yourself is really overwhelming for some people.
That's fascinating. So
themselves.
What kind of walk attracted men in a Whole Foods? And I love how the conversation about dating keeps getting back to Whole Foods. This is like,
I know, right?
Is like the dating market.
Oh my God, it's the best place to pick up women. Okay, so for me, I also have this exercise that's called What Animal Are You? And so when you identify yourself as an animal and you attach 5 attributes to it, those things you can quickly call on if needed and you want to get to a confident place. So for me, I have my cougar walk, which is not like meaning older woman going after younger men, but I gave 5 attributes to a cougar, like slow and steady, precise, like just things that in my mind also kind of said sexy. And that's the walk that I do, and I can quickly take on my vision of a cougar and put that into my body when I want other men to look at me. I walk slowly. I have my chest slightly out. I have a smirk on my face. I stare people in the eye. I have no problems with holding eye contact. I know that if I were to talk to them, I would talk more slowly. Like even now, I'm doing it while on the phone with you. So I can quickly put that into my body. But that type of walk gets more attention from men than when I, scurry around Whole Foods and have my head down where I'm not looking at anybody and I'm quickly trying to get in and get out. Like that doesn't get any attention from anybody, let alone men.
That's so funny. So guys, you would notice guys would come up to you or try to start having a conversation with you.
Oh yeah, and I could tell that I was also, some guys I was actually intimidating them. So I would hold eye contact, and usually I break away from eye contact, but I held my eye contact strong, and we had a face-off of eye contact, and typically they would break away first, but then look back and smile afterwards. So yes, that is what I could do to get attention from men, and I give that exercise to men to do as well, because then they start to notice what they can be doing with their body language and the way that they walk and present themselves that will either, intimidate women, attract women, turn women off, turn women on. It just gets them to play around with their body because most of us live in static mode, right? So we have like our go-to face that we have on, or we have our go-to body language, or our go-to walk. And when you start to play around with it a bit, you can see how it can change the reactions from yourself and from other people and either give you confidence or give you lack of confidence.
This again reminds me actually of stand-up comedy because, you compare a stand-up comic to, like, let's say someone who's just doing public speaking. So someone who's just giving a talk is going to be in a monotone probably the entire time. But a stand-up comic is going to be multiple characters, multiple voices. Like, you're really going to break out of your comfort zone to get different reactions from the audience.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But even Kristen knows this. Like, it's like even changing the way that you say a sentence can get a laugh out of the audience, or can make them dislike you.
Yeah, like Kristen, like when you watch Louis C.K. and every now and then he puts on like his little girl voice, or in some acts he has like the voice of God, and where he's like really angry, and when he does different voices, it's just funny him doing another voice.
Right. Well, it shows you that he's comfortable to maybe sound stupid or sound silly or sound different than people would expect. But there's also something that I think is interesting in terms of body language with comedy is there's certain things comedians do that they're comfortable. For example, they have their water bottle on the stool and they can pause and take a minute and take a break and take a sip from the water bottle, and they're not worried about leaving the audience hanging for a minute. So I think, men can also apply that to women, where you don't have to fill every beat with something witty or something interesting. Another thing that comics do that I think differentiate someone from being a novice versus being experienced is the way they hold the microphone. So a novice or like someone beginning, they might hold the microphone up to their mouth when they're saying something, but then they bring it down, like they bend their elbow back when they take a break, and they put their head down, and then they bring it back up and they put it back down. But a comic holds the microphone closer to their mouth and doesn't move it. It doesn't really, unless it involves some sort of physical bit. So there's like a confidence there in just movements that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I really just love the whole comedy world and all of these little tricks, because it's more like the humor part is almost the least of it. It's all of this other stuff that gives the comic, and I guess, and this applies also to, meeting people. It gives presence to what you're doing. Right.
A natural presence that people. But for me, growing up, I was not good at school at all. I really wasn't interested in it, but for some reason, the school selected me to go and speak at these like youth convention things, and I was so good at it. It was like I just got into my element, and it was because I felt like in that moment, because I had been offered to do something like that, I felt confident because someone believed in me. And so because they chose me to speak, I thought, well, I must be decent at this because I get selected for nothing else in school, and gave me an air of confidence. So I walked up, I didn't apologize, and that's where I realized how much my presence on stage actually was shining through. So I think in my everyday life, I don't walk, like a cougar, and I kind of have my shoulders down. But that's because I want to be left alone. I really don't like to be approached personally most of the time. But when I'm in my element and I feel like I have control a little bit over the situation, I'm not talking to just one person, I'm talking to a crowd, and they're perking up at me, then my shoulders go back and my whole demeanor changes, and people perceive me as incredibly confident. But when if you saw me at Whole Foods, you would just see me getting, a package of, like rice and scurrying out, and people thinking I'm probably not that smart or something, So
but the difference is with the audience in front of you there,
I've seen
you
Kristen at Whole
in your
Foods.
element,
He looks
you're
very
seducing
intelligent.
the audience. So you're playing that role.
What did you say that one more time?
When you're in your element there, you're seducing the audience.
Yeah, it really. I mean, for me, it really comes down to just. I don't want to say it's an act because it's not, but it's something that, as a performer, I can turn on or I can just shut off. So if I hold my shoulders back and feel like really cool about everything I say, people are like, I would have never known that you have confidence issues, or like for me, I was bullied my entire childhood growing up. They would never know. People always think that I was like a mean girl in high school, the way I hold myself on stage. But I wasn't. I was actually the complete opposite. But it's because there's something inside of me that can perform. I can turn it on. It's totally fake. I'm not confident, really, So for again, it's you fake it till you make it, and I'm continuing to fake it, but I'm almost making it. So.
Okay, but I've seen not only the video clips of you on stage, but also some of the sketches you've been in, and you definitely exude confidence. So I don't believe you when you say you don't have confidence, unless I'm totally fooled by your faking it.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing is I did grow up as a dancer on stage. I used to perform in Disneyland and Disney World and all that stuff. So when I was on stage, that's where I got that's basically where I wasn't bullied. So whenever I am on stage, I go back to where I always felt the best. So I think that's why I do come across confident. And I mean, I'm not totally self-loathing, but I mean, even on the phone call right now, I'm like, what am I even saying? Like before we started the phone call, I was like, you know what, I should just call Marni and tell her to just do it because she's the successful one. It comes out in me constantly.
I'm glad you both got on the call. I feel like I could talk to you guys for another 3 hours, but...
I know. Well, I do want to say one thing, sorry, just to let you know. Just Kristen, I've been even loving the way that you're carrying yourself on this call. But Kristen does what a lot of people do. Like, they'll be really confident and say their opinion, and then they'll apologize for it afterwards and, doubt themselves. They don't want to come across as too confident. But, Kristen, you have been very sexy on this phone call. I'm very impressed with you.
Hey, Kristen, you're hearing it from an expert there. Marni, how did you meet your husband?
Oh, I met him actually a month before I started my business. So I dated his roommate, and then I dated one of his friends, but I never met my husband. But the friend who it didn't work out with him, he just kept inviting me to things and told me to bring my girlfriends around. He had a lot of guy friends. So he invited me to, they used to have these beach parties at the Washington Pier. They play volleyball and have cocktails. And so I went there with a few of my girlfriends and met my husband there, but wasn't interested in him, had a conversation with him. He was really nice. And then I saw him a few times later at a bar, and he was different than how he was on the beach. He was confident. He was kind of teasing me a little bit and being sarcastic. And then I asked him for his phone number. And then from that point on, we've been together.
And does he ever get like, obviously your job involves you being totally in the dating scene for men. Like, does he ever get like a little nervous or threatened by that?
No, and that's why I find him so sexy. I think also if I was like, hey, I'm going out tonight with like all these hot guys, and I was working on making him jealous, or I can't make somebody jealous, but if I was helping with that, I think he would have more difficulty, but he's totally confident in who he is and really trusts me as we've gained trust with each other over time. So no, he's super proud of what I do. Especially, it's very different from the very beginning. At first I was going out with guys on Craigslist that I met, helping them pick up girls, and they were all kind of weird. So I think at that point he was kind of weirded out by what I did, but then once, it became a very legitimate business and he was seeing the emails that I was getting from guys every single day thanking me, he's like beyond proud. What Kristen and I are actually doing is helping out with male empowerment. And I think if there's a man who isn't supportive of that, then he definitely should not be with me. But there's probably something more wrong with him. So yeah, my husband is in full support of what I do.
Well, it's amazing that you, again, both have created these careers for yourselves. Like, particularly right now, so many people are afraid to take chances, and you've both taken every chance possible and have been successful or moving towards success with it. Like Kristen, you have a book coming out next year. You're self-publishing a book?
Yeah, I'm currently writing it right now. It's called Can I Get a Hem? I really still don't know how to say it, but basically it's all social etiquette. It's a funny social etiquette guide. It's not, your 1800s, put your lace, tablecloth down before you serve tea kind of thing. It's more just how to be a decent human being, because I think a lot of people forget. So hopefully that'll come out. It'll be on Amazon probably in the next 10 months or so.
That's good. Not my last book, but the book before it, I self-published, and I love self-publishing because you get essentially 70% of the revenues as opposed to 15% with a publisher. So just self-publishing, in my view, is the way to go.
I learned it from Marni, because I know Marni's done a great job with that stuff. So I'm learning from her.
Well, Marni, you did. So I'm gonna plug your book here. Get Inside Her: Dirty Dating Tips and Secrets from a Woman on How to Attract, Seduce, and Get Any Female You Want. Was that with a publisher?
No, that was self-published.
Oh, I love it. I love all the self-publishing.
Yeah, well, it's so much better. I tried to go the self-publishing route, but I got offered a contract, and they wanted to basically own my book and any content that was in the book for the next 20 years. And the content of my book is my business. So they wanted to own a portion of my business and receive 70%. It was just a mess. And it was like a really legit publishing company. And when I found out about self-publishing and the fact that even with a publishing company, you do all the marketing. It's you driving the sales for
totally.
The book.
I don't know of any publishing company that knows how to do marketing.
No, they have no clue. And you know this because, I know your audience size. You know that you can do phenomenal with marketing your book just by announcing it to your audience in a strategic way that allows you to become a bestseller very quickly on Amazon or on other platforms. So, you've built up something. I've built up something together. Kristen and I have built up something. There's no need for publishing companies to be involved, especially if you want to have a successful book.
You know what you guys should do? You have so many episodes of the Ask Women podcast. You should take transcripts and provide additional commentary, and every 10 episodes, just publish it as a book. Just keep churning out books on Amazon.
That's an amazing idea.
That is a
That's
great
amazing.
idea.
I just got chills when you said that's actually a really good idea. Because I've been trying to think about things that we can do for the podcast. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have, like, Podcast One probably hooks you up with sponsorship and all that. They seem like a good company to work with. They
Yeah.
host your podcast?
Yeah, they post our podcast. They're our partners. So they do the production, the engineering. They put it on their platform. But that's a really, really smart idea.
I'm always glad to come up with ideas.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's been very great having you on the show. I really hope we can have you on again. So let me plug a whole bunch of things, because you guys produce so much content, it's ridiculous. I don't even know where to begin. but Marni, there's the Wing Girl Method. So it's winggirlmethod.com, and
Yes.
people could buy tons of stuff there. Plus, you're an excellent. You learn quickly from the whole internet marketing crew. You have tons of great free material. You always want to have your best material for free, and then you have your core. Get this to get that extra 5%. So
Yeah.
it seems like you have like an excellent marketing thing going on there.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
and then Kristen, you have KristenCarney.com, which has all of your
Yeah.
appearances and everything else. You don't have a blog, I notice.
Well, I do actually have a blog. I haven't really been updating it frequently, but my blog is called Sweat the Small Stuff with Kristen.com, and that's actually where I'm kind of stemming my book from, is from all that content that's up there. So people can check that out, but I haven't updated that in quite some time. But just follow me on Twitter would be awesome, and that's just at Kristen Carney, and that's Kristen with a K.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to find you on Twitter. I'm going to follow you right now.
Actually, I'm at Wing Girl Method. You can follow.
I'm going to follow both of you right now.
Cool. And we should have you on our podcast.
Yeah,
I should go. Adam Carolla, who's podcast one, I guess, he was on my podcast as well.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And because we were talking about patent stuff, and like I said, I've had Jeff Miller, who's into the evolutionary psychology stuff. He's been on, and Tucker Max, who's also into that stuff. He's been on.
Oh yeah, you have amazing
we love
people
Tucker
on
Max on our show too.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
God,
know. We're
you
gonna
gotta
start
have
stealing
Tucker
guests
Max
from
on
you,
your
'cause
show.
He would be amazing. I would love to have Mark Cuban, or even I know Chris doesn't know who this is, but Gary Vaynerchuk, who you had on your podcast as well. Like, you have a good lineup of people.
Oh, I'll introduce Gary to you. He's a good guy. But I'll tell you,
I would love
the
that. I have a
guy
crush on him.
you should have on the show is Tucker.
Yeah,
Oh, for sure.
I think we actually
100%.
tried to get Tucker a while back, but I don't know if I think it fell through. But we would definitely love to have him.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
he's a
calling him
marketing
right after
genius.
this show, and he's going to go on your show, hopefully.
Oh,
Okay,
I love
cool.
That. That'd be awesome.
I can't promise for him,
Thank
but
you.
I'm sure he would be excited about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we would
Thank
love to
you.
have him.
So
Yeah,
well, thanks very much, and I'm going to close out the show here. But I hope we get a chance to talk again. It's been really great talking to you guys.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah,
too.
for
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah,
And definitely
thanks.
come on our show too.
Oh, I definitely will. You should ask me, and I will come on.
Okay, well, we're asking you now, so come on our show,
It's
and
official.
then we'll go through Tim, who introduced us.
Yeah, perfect. Done.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
All right, thanks a lot, you
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
For more from James, check out the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network at stansberryradio.com and get yourself on the free insiders list today.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.